Hello, it's Sarah from Heart of Our Hearts, and I'm here with my week of reading wrap-up. This is where I talk about the books that I read this week, what I'm currently reading, and then potentially could read next week based on my mood. So I had kind of a mixed bag this week. I finished a few things. I DNF'd something. We'll talk about that in a second. And am making great progress on some other things and have a lot to look forward to next week. So let's get into it. First thing that I completed, and I say completed, let me preface that. So I completed a good chunk of this and skipped the rest, as I want to do with essays. This is the Ferrari Letters, an experiment in collective criticism. And there are 4 authors here: Sharah Chihaya, Merve Emre, Katherine Hill, and Jill Richards. I loved the section where the 4 of these people wrote back and forth to each other about the Ferrante series. How they approached it is they started from the very first of, which is My Brilliant Friend, of the Ferrante series, the Neapolitan series I'm speaking of specifically, and they would talk about it. They would talk about their experience reading it. They would talk about what it evoked, how they were approaching the literature. They would send that to the 3 others who would then, and each of them would then respond. And then they would move on to the next book, to the last book. And I just found that such an interesting way of interacting with the material, a way to have this kind of collective criticism, as it says in the name of it. And that really kept me engaged. Now, in the second half, each of them kind of have their section where they go really deep. And that kind of bored me to tears in that part specifically. It's not, and I think I might come back to this at some point, but the juice or the energy really, for me, really came from their conversations that they had where they would respond to each other, where they would talk about what they were reacting to from their perspective, as well as what the other people had brought to the table. And that I found very, very interesting. But what I liked about this, I really, really liked. And the others, I didn't feel like I could judge, because I just don't care about that deep kind of criticism. So that was the first one I completed. The next one I did in audio, but I also have the digital, which was great because I could go back and look at the drawings. This is Broad Strokes, 15 Women Who Made Art and Made History, in that order, by Bridget Quinn. This is a continuation of my women visual artists kind of deep dive that I wanted to do this Nonfiction November. And I'm really glad that I listened to this at the end. It's broad strokes. It's an overview of 15 different women. It's feisty, it's bold, it looks at their history, looks at their art, looks at how they were positioned and what they contributed. And I really enjoyed it. There were a couple women that I knew. So Lee Krasner, I knew of because having read or listened to 9th Street artists. And that was what I talked about in a previous episode. But then there's Ruth Asawa, who I absolutely adore. She's a San Francisco artist. We love her in the city, and her work is just phenomenal, and her life is incredibly interesting. So I loved hearing her included in that. Put this back. There was Kara Walker. And Kara Walker I heard about from the first book that kind of teased me into this, which was Old at Art School by Nell Painter. And she talked about 2 artists that appeared in here. One was Kara Walker. Kara Walker does incredibly controversial painting that is confronting America's mythology of slavery in very horrific, beautiful paintings and beautiful art, but beautiful horror. It is. It's really hard to look at the art that she creates, and I think that's purposeful. Obviously, It's the point. It's the point. And she takes like almost these cutout images, paper cutout images. So it looks almost cartoonish. It looks like an old style puppet show or shadow play. But it's what she's choosing to reflect, and the absolute horrors. I think she's remarkable, but like I said, it is really hard to watch and to look at. So it was great having her there. And then Alice Neal, who I didn't know anything about until I also listened to Old in Art School, and just her badass nature as an adult, as an 80-year-old woman painting a nude, and just kind of confronting the idea of the body and the male gaze, and kind of being really aggressive in, well, this is what happens to an old body. Phenomenal. And there's so much more interesting things about her than just that one portrait that she did. I love when this happens, when things just kind of pull together. So, I'm reading Virginia Woolf, more about that later. They had Vanessa Bell, her sister, who designed a lot of her covers and did a lot of the designs for Hogarth Press, which was her and Leonard's, their printing company, press company. And so to have Vanessa Bell listed in here was fantastic. And also incredibly important, I was so glad to see Ana Mendieta. She was an artist, a very important artist, who was killed in a domestic abuse situation with her very famous painter husband. And he was never charged. And he went on to have all these glorious accolades. And she was just basically ignored and left on that pavement where she was pushed out of a window. And it was incredibly moving to hear all the ways that women refused to let her be ignored, and her contribution to be ignored. And so I was really happy to see her in there. I've heard her story before, and it's incredibly powerful. And I think anytime I hear it again, it just feels like, yes, it needs to be repeated so that she's not forgotten. So I thought that was fun. And if you want just a primer, an introduction to some of these fantastic women, and as a kind of dipping your toe in to figure out a direction you'd like to explore more, this would be a very good start. Then I read Black Narcissus. This is by Rumer Godden. I read The River from her just a little while ago, and really liked the writing style. Now, this is considered one of her masterpieces. And if you followed me for a little while, you know that I am always on the lookout for a book that reckons with colonialism. And if you can add missionary work in there too, you've got me hooked. This comes so close. Doesn't really get to where I'd hoped it had gotten to, but it still offers a lot of insight, and I think a lot of humility in this reckoning. So what you have here is there's an old palace. This is set in kind of Tibet, Nepal, Tibet area. And this is written in the 1940s. 1941 is when it was published, actually. And the story is that there was this old palace that is way up in, I think it's like the Himalayas, and it's on the edge of a precipice. And you can see over the entire valley and the entire landscape, and you're almost like in the heavens. And it's this gorgeous but very decrepit, very rundown palace. It used to be the pleasure palace of a prince, and he kept his women there. So it was the women's palace, and bad things happened there. And so there's this lustful kind of current that runs in this location. It's been abandoned. It was taken over by some monks who didn't even last a full year. They think they only lasted maybe 5 months there, and then they backed out. And so when it became available for this order of nuns, they took it on. And so they take this on and they trek. You've got, I think, about 5 nuns that trek through dangerous conditions to get up to this high mountain peak. And try to establish some order into this wild place. And most telling, as they come up, they pass a holy man, and this holy man sits meditating on under a tree, and has done that for years. And so he's kind of like the conscience of and what grounds this area to the traditions that have always been in play, regardless of who is in power. So we have these women, and we have them arriving, and this place, I don't want to talk too much about what happens in the book, but it's really the isolation and the wind kind of stir up a lot of things in these women, each individually. Things of past issues as well as present and current ones. What I found most interesting were the questions of what were they actually trying to do there? Why were they setting up a school? Why were they setting up a hospital? And what were they expecting to do, this conversion? And how they in turn left humbled. Now, I wanted that humility to come with little stronger lessons or stronger reflections. I did, you don't always get what you want. But I enjoyed this, and I think it was an excellent, excellent read. So that was Black Narcissus. Now, I read this, I bumped it up in my priority because there was a new FX show on Hulu, I think it's on Hulu, that is Black Narcissus. It's a 3-part series. And so I immediately closed the book, jumped onto the couch, turned it on, and started watching it. I will say visually amazing, stunning cinematography. The landscape, this palace on this cliff, gorgeous. The story all over the place, and it went in really weird directions. It became a ghost story. It lost the thread. So if you're watching that thinking it's the book, it's not. There are elements that were leveraged and used, but it's not. It doesn't speak to kind of more of the deeper truths that the book unveils. So take that with a word of caution. You want something visually stunning, then yes, that's the thing to do. So that's what I finished. Let me tell you what I DNF'd. This one is Durga Chew-Bose's Too Much and Not the Mood. I will call this Not Enough and Not the Mood. I gave up on this, despite the fact that I was reading it with one of my favorite buddy readers. But I just, what the hell was going on? I couldn't latch on to anything. The very first essay started off in an interesting way, but I never felt a connecting, and it went on and on and on. I felt all of these random ideas, and I couldn't see how one idea connected to the other. I was really annoyed with the orientation of the page layout and how it was presented, because it just, like I said, it was just like this stream of consciousness. But a stream of consciousness you should be meandering into something. Things should flow. You should be able to hear how one idea flows into another. Lord knows, I read Duck's Newburyport, where one idea floated and you could see how one idea led into another. May not be how I would draw those connections, but you can see the connections. This just felt completely random. Now, there were some phrasings that were delicious, some beautiful little gems of an idea, but never, I could not stay with it long enough to see if it was going anywhere. And it dawned on me that I didn't think it was. So I reached out to my buddy reader and I said, I don't know if this is me. If you finished this, tell me, does it wrap itself up? Because if so, I'll keep going. If not, I've got so many other things I'd rather read, and this is just annoying me. She's like, no, it doesn't really. She says it continues in that same path. And so I said, I'm out. So was not happy with this. It wasn't, and I do like stream of conscience. I do like experimental, but I need to feel grounded in some way. I just didn't with this. And then I looked at some people's reviews, and they said that the first one was the best. And I thought, oh, well, that's it. I'm definitely out if that's the case. Okay, then what am I currently reading? Yes, still making progress in Proust. We're a quarter of the way through volume 2. Then making significant progress on Virginia Woolf. This is a writer's diary being. This is extracts from her writing life. This is by Virginia Woolf. So we're starting to get to the end. And so we know that Virginia Woolf takes her own life. We only have about 5 years left. We also have the specter of World War II looming. And it is making for incredibly, incredibly tense reading. And so it's just such an interesting and painful portion. I think we're going to try to finish this very, very soon. We're kind of going very quickly at the end, because I think both of us are a little nervous about how dark it's going to get at the end. Whew. Then I'm about 11% in on Memoirs of a Dutiful Daughter by Simone de Beauvoir. I'm enjoying it, but it's something that I need to come back to. So I think once I get Woolf done, it might make that easier. There's someone playing jazz outside. Literally, I think there's a saxophone outside. Berkeley, what can I say? I'll use that as a backdrop. If you can hear it, it'll be a backdrop to what I say, because I don't know how long. I don't know if they'll be moving on or if they're just going to stay parked under my window. You never know. But they play very well, so voila. So I'll continue to read that. Then this is the third time it's come up in my holds, so I decided now's the time. And this is Ken Follett's prequel to the Kingsbridge series. This is The Evening and the Morning. So there is something about Ken Follett's work. It is not high literary fiction. It is rooted in this historical fiction, in the sense of like where he takes older time periods, and this time it's the Middle Ages, coming out of the Dark Ages. I think it's 900 after death, 900 AD, right after Rome has left London, and so we're in this kind of battle for dominancy over England. And what he does is he makes these really compelling stories. And it's just very simple. They're just very, very simple, really easy to listen to, but stories of families and stories of community, and kind of the intricacies of what was happening and where the power lies in these times, which is usually the church, and just the daily struggles of the people in these villages. And it's just easy to fall into, and they're always really long. And so you just feel like you go on a journey. And sometimes I just really like those. They don't have to have allusions and themes and be steeped in metaphor. Sometimes you can just enjoy a good yarn being told. And that's kind of how I think of Ken Follett's work, specifically this one. So I'm enjoying it more than I thought I would. There are, every once in a while, there's something with this series that I'll hear something and I'll think, that just it sounds too much like a modern sensibility that wouldn't exist then. But I'm usually at that stage so engrossed in finding out what happens to these characters and just interested in their story that I go along with it. But I don't give it a ton of credence. He's definitely not someone I consider, a scholar. I think he does good research, but I don't necessarily. I take it all with a grain of salt. So then let me show you what it's going to lead to. I'm going to. It's Saturday now. I've had we'll have had a 4-day weekend. So that just makes this utterly delightful. Okay. I'm also going to be reading Swallowing Geography by Deborah Levy. I didn't have it in my list. Again, I've said it before, but I may make this list and I may never come back to it. I realize I wanted to read more Deborah Levy. This is part of my 2020 reading aspirations, and I haven't gotten to it. So this is perfect to kind of fit this in. And then, yeah, I'm going to just try to grab some from here and read some of these this weekend. Then I also, because of this enjoyment of women artists, I did a massive library haul. So let me just show you some of these. These are not books that I'm going to be reading, but I'm going to be kind of looking through and kind of being inspired by. So I'm just going to flash these because these are all just gigantic coffee table books. And it makes me wish I had a coffee table, but I don't have the room. This is Lee Krasner. Look at this gorgeous. This is by the Barbican that put this out. Thames and Hudson publisher. And it is just stunning. It's called Lee Krasner Living Color. Just gorgeous. And look at that back cover. So look through that. This is 3 artists, 3 women, Modernism and the Art of Hess, Krasner, and O'Keeffe. This is by Anne Middleton Wagner. Get the glare out of there. This is by University of California Press. This is The Paintings of Joan Mitchell. See if you can see that. Gorgeous. This is by University of California Press as well. This is Grace Hardigan, A Painter's World. You can really hear the jazz going now. Feels pretty appropriate, doesn't it? This is by Hudson Hills Press. Gorgeous. I have Helen Frankenthaler. Then there is this gorgeous one. This is very thin. This is Helen Frankenthaler, Composing with Color, Paintings 1962-1963. And this is by the Gagosian, New York. And lastly, this is Painted on 21st Street, Helen Frankenthaler from 1950 to 1959. I just think that cover's fantastic. And this one is published by the Gagosian Gallery, New York. So same. So I'm just going to be just, as one does with a coffee table book, just paging through, getting inspiration and all of that good stuff. And then lastly, I wanted to make sure that everyone knew, if you're still interested in joining the Maggie Smith, if you're still interested in joining the Allie Smith seasonal quartet group read that I'm hosting, you need to let me know ASAP. I'm going to be setting up the Voxer account one day only, set it up and then lock it down. And I'll be setting that up on Monday, which is the 30th, the last day of the month. And we will be checking in on the first section of this. I've broken it into 4 sections. We'll be checking in on Sunday. This is starting with autumn. So that will be on deck next week as well. And that's it. So yeah, pretty excited. I hope you are doing very well. Please let me know if you've read any of these books, if any of these books make you think of other books that you think I would like. And I hope you're staying safe. And I hope if you're celebrating, you're having a great Thanksgiving weekend. And yeah, remember, we're still in a pandemic. Please maintain safe social distance, wear your masks, wash your hands, and don't touch your face. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to talking to you later. Bye.